Yeah, is it visible?
Yes, it is. Hi, Ayan.
Hi, Trista ma'am. How are you?
I'm good. How are you doing?
I'm very good, ma'am. Are you on campus?
No, no, I'm actually working from home this semester. You're on campus?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, okay, we'll have a chat later. Let Jaya begin.
I think a few of them have classes, lectures scheduled today, this time.
Yeah, we will anyway record and put it on CESP's YouTube. So let's see if
Okay.
people are joining. I hope they're joining. I've just sent a reminder. Let's see.
Okay, okay.
Yeah, I've started recording. Okay.
Okay. Right. Good afternoon. My name is Jaya, and I'm currently pursuing my master's in public policy from JSTP. This is after having completed my bachelor's in law from National Law University, Vizag. I've also been working with the Center for Complexity Economics, Applied Spirituality, and Public Policy as a research assistant, where currently I'm working on applied spirituality and sustainable development book project, and I'll be assisting Professor Naresh with one of the chapters. And further, I'm also working on the Seeds project. Now, before we go further with the discussion, I would like to take you all through the flow on what we'll be discussing today through this presentation. So as it says, we start by understanding the basic, that is what is law and spirituality. And then we see if they are interconnected, their practice, and we would also try to understand on how spirituality, when applied in law, could benefit us and everyone part of it. And finally, we end with discussing on some questions. Now, right. So now, what do we understand by the term spirituality? Spirituality, as you can see on the slide, it comprises of values that we build, the purpose of knowing beyond the self, a way of understanding inner awareness, equality, oneness, service to others, and harmony. It is something that is connected to morality. Now, morality here, what we need to understand is that it provides a system or a code of principles, values, and rules according to which intentions, behaviors, and actions are judged to be good or bad. The essence of spirituality is distinct from religion and traditions, and this is something that we really need to understand because most of us tend to relate spirituality with the religion. Spirituality, in fact, helps us to rise above our basic instincts, the prejudice that we have in our mind, and other stereotypes that we might have. Through spirituality, we are constantly in touch with ourselves, and it becomes easy for us to locate where the false inputs come from. Now, moving on, what do we understand by law? Of course, all of us would have come across the terms constitution, fundamental rights, and directive principles of state policy that we all are bounded by, including the institutions that we have in our country. Now, law, not only in our country, but in every other country, it serves as a norm of conduct for citizens. Law was made to provide for proper guidelines and order upon the behavior for all the citizens and to sustain the equity on the three branches of the government, that is the judiciary, executive, and the legislative. Without this, there will be conflicts between social groups and communities. It, in fact, provides with certain constraints on our behavior that may legitimately be prohibited. For an example, it actually criminalizes certain acts done by individuals in our society where most of us regard it as immoral. The legal attitude provides a sense of social justice and responsibility, which leads to respect and protects the rights of others and the basic laws of a political community. The spiritual attitude leads to the liberation of the self and promotes a sense of fellowship with human beings and harmony with the universe. Now comes the question is of whether law is enough to adapt to the social changes and the behaviors happening in our society. Now, if that's the case, according to the NCRB report 2019, I would like to question as to why do we see that there is a rise in repeated offenders in our country. I mean, why do they still want to retaliate and not opt for peace after coming out of the prisons when they are meant to house and correct individuals? Now, there was an interesting lecture that I got to attend by Professor James Kimmel on law and spirituality, where he has spoken on people experiencing grievance. He has specifically focused and explained on the perception that people have when they get hurt or might have experienced some sort of mistreatment or injustice. Now, here, what we need to understand is that the injustice could be as small as an insult or as big as a crime. An insult for you might be completely different from what I perceive an insult could be. Now, this entirely makes it subjective. Now, even though we have legal framework and institutions, there have been studies, and in fact, some of them have proved that spirituality could indeed go beyond and heal people mentally and emotionally. This could make them prevent the thought of inflicting pain on others. Usually, what happens is people who are mistreated or have been abused tend to make it their primary motive to do the same. Give it to do the same as in to give it back to hurt them back. It's only then that they believe that it could help them relieve pain. Hence, even coming out of the prisons, they tend to repeat the offense again and again. When we look closely, the root cause for all of this starts from how we feel about our own selves and how we see others. And the cycle never ends if this is how it continues. Now, let's try to understand. Now, to understand this better, we really need to see how law and spirituality are interlinked or intertwined with one another. The reading that has been shared on why spirituality matters for law, an explanation by Raphael, he mentions how spirituality triad of love, communication, and gift is deeply interconnected with the triad of justice, agreement, and rights. Now, both of them reflect an experience and an attitude in humans. Spirituality and law are systems with a set of interdependent values and interacting procedures. The legal attitude in any person provides a sense of social justice and responsibility, which leads to respect and protects the rights of others and the basic laws of a political community. On the other on the other hand, spiritual attitude leads to a liberation of self and promotes a sense of fellowship with human beings, and we tend to live in harmony. The author also dwelled into the deep connectivity between the legal and the spiritual triad. Here, uh, what what we can understand is that the law provides the necessary platform for justice to flourish, and justice provides the unique platform for love to flourish. Many legal systems have in fact accepted the idea of forgiveness as an expression that is compatible with justice. Conflicts of protected interest or rights are inevitable in any society, as we all know, but they are easy to resolve when human beings live in a self-giving attitude, looking for the common good more than strictly just limiting it to themselves. Now, sometimes law might come with certain restrictions, like sometimes it might just fail to understand the root cause, but spirituality here helps in digging deep into the cause. When someone violates law, let's say, and causes a loss to another, then the law comes into action and the offender is brought before the courtroom where judgment is delivered according to the prior deeds of the person who violated the law. The law here enlists the rights and duties of the parties. We all know that we all know that it is there to come to the aid of those whose actions have propelled such a protection and punishes those who have been the performers of misdeeds. When we look at law and its enforcement from this lens, then we realize that it is nothing different from the doctrine of karma, which is prevalent in spiritual traditions for so long. Now, how can spirituality help in law? Now, I would like to take myself as an example here because being a lawyer myself, I might want to put it in the being a lawyer myself, I think I could just make a case for myself here. I might want to, being a lawyer, I might want to put in the best arguments, like all of the lawyers, like how they want to do. They would definitely want to step into the shoes of their client and paint the offense before the court and give the judgment, and that's it. That's what we all do as lawyers. But with spirituality, what happens is I would be able to build and use my conscience to aptly understand the rights and responsibilities. As a lawyer, it is not just about the arguments that I would want to put forward, but it also needs some subtleness and sensitivity of mind. Our minds need to think rationally, and this can only be nurtured with the practice of spiritual values. This is just not only applicable for the lawyers, but also it could be applied to anyone working with the legal enforcement or any system like the judges. Lawyers like us are bound by a code of ethics, which is laid down for them and has a statutory force. These ethical values, which the legal profession is supposed to practice as inherent spiritual values too. Spirituality says Sarvajan Hridaya, Sarvajan Sukhaya, and this is the basic spirit of the judiciary, but without compromising the rights of any individuals and group. Hence, spirituality and judiciary should play a complementary and collaborative role to bring about peace and harmony in the society. Let's take it the case of criminals. Now that we have discussed about the lawyers, taking the case of criminals, spirituality could in fact help them break the vicious cycle of repeating the offenses and could help them transform from within. As per the report by the Berkeley Center, it was found that spirituality, when applied, the outcomes include lower level of criminal activity, improved mental health of the criminals, and in fact gives a better direction to them. Through spirituality, there is a high chance that these criminals might feel included as a part of the society, and the society becomes more and more accepting. Now, apart from these two, there's also one more thing that these two, spirituality and law, brings in together, that is equality. Although the law focuses on our external body, on the external bodies and bodies, spirituality focuses on the invisible. Both of them just unites us all. Right to equality is one of the basic features of law, and spirituality also considers that everyone is equal. Law considers everyone equal before the eyes of the law, and the spirituality considers everyone to be treated equally in the society. Spirituality here also provides that everyone is ultimately one reality in the highest analysis, and everyone is equal irrespective of their gender, age, nationality, and much more. And consequently, everyone should be treated equally with compassion. And this is what spirituality talks about. The basic spiritual values and the fundamental principles that we have in law, that we see in our constitution, are the same. But the law is being improved and developed towards more socially acceptable guidelines for the benefit of the society as a whole. And in the process, spirituality has much more to contribute that we don't know of. Now, finally, I it's now when we talk about spirituality and inculcating that into law, it's something that would take some time for for people to understand and for it to be included into law. But there's something that we could do, something that it's easy for us to do to bring these two elements together. First is that people must begin to demand peace and happiness when they have been wronged, rather than justice in the form of revenge. This actually, when we sue for justice in the form of revenge, is to sue for conflict and disunity. Instead, we must bring to learn to sue for peace and reconciliation. Secondly, it is people must begin to look beyond the lawyers and judges, because what happens is they go for it and it just ultimately ends up in the court fighting with one another. But a strong communication itself is more than enough to bring us all together and to solve a lot of issues that need not go till the court. Finally, us lawyers will do what their clients demand, and especially lawyers become very greedy when it comes to the cases that they get. This means that the clients, they do bear as much responsibility for the current state of affairs in the justice system as to the lawyers. It's just not the lawyers, but also the people. Then, than this, what could actually happen is that lawyers could in fact help the people to bring in peace than taking this to the court and making it much worse. Issues that could be easily resolved could be resolved in front of the lawyer when both the parties could sit. So it's that easy if it could be resolved. Uh, Yes. So with this, I would like to conclude. I would just conclude the presentation at the end after we discuss these questions, which I have put on the screen. So the first question I would like to ask for us to discuss is, what are your thoughts on criminals practicing spirituality? Do you think this could actually lead to less crime? Do you think society would be able to accept them and include back in the society? And the second question is, do you think spirituality could actually be implemented in our judicial system or with any law enforcement system? If yes, what do you think could be the steps that we need to keep in mind? If no, why do you think it wouldn't be possible? Finally, the last question is, while I was discussing, I did discuss about how forgiveness is taken as a solution by few countries. But do you think the victims of severe crime like rape or an assault would be able to forgive the criminals or forgive themselves? Is it justified? What are your thoughts on this? And the last question, I do understand that is quite sensitive. So if there's anyone who do not want to answer, please feel free to not answer and not to discuss further about this. But if you think one can forgive, and if that could help, what steps can victims could take consciously and practice spirituality on an individual level? So these are the three questions that are up for discussion. So yes.
Hi, my name is Ayan Banerjee, and I want to talk about the first question. Especially the discussion was very insightful about like law and spirituality. I really loved it. Uh, like what I want to say is that I think that this is a really nice idea of criminals practicing spirituality, because I think that mostly people become criminals, as far as I think, because there is maybe they've been given a wrong direction by something or someone, by spirituality. Once someone understands themselves better, which I think spirituality really helps with, if you're able to understand yourself better, you can actually change your ways and mindset. Like for example, I have been an animal rights activist for around 4 years. So one of the main person in our movements, Joey Carbstrong, he was actually a criminal. For 2 3 years, he was on drugs and he used to sell drugs and all. But once he got to know about about animal rights and what we're doing to them and all of those things, so he directed his all of his energy into that path. And he's a very celebrated activist for doing that. Actually, I would say that especially this last part of the question, like would they be able to accept, like if the society will be able to accept them or not. I think if they actually change their actions, they would actually become much more inspiring. Like for example, me, if I don't smoke and I tell people not to smoke, I don't sound as a that inspirational person, or that person who could lead people not to smoke. But if I I have been a heavy smoker for 5 to 10 years, and a lot of things have happened to me because of that, and then I leave it, and then I open an NGO which helps people leave smoking. People would get more inspiration from that rather than someone who has never smoked. So
Right, right.
actually, it's much more powerful. I feel like when you have been through something and you can actually get into it and lead people out of it. Because if I have never been into something, like criminals, like if they have committed crimes, they can actually lead other people why not to do it. Like we all know why, crimes are bad, and how dangerous it is, or whatever it is, and what kind of punishments you'll get. But those who have been through it can actually tell the experience and actually make the impact, and will be a better figure to take inspiration from than who has never committed a crime ever. So I think there's a more likely chance that society will accept them and maybe make them not a hero, but some inspirational figure if they really strive hard and they've been
change.
hit
Yes.
hard as a criminal. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah, it makes sense actually, yes. Maybe it might take a bit of a time for society to accept them, but if they could actually put themselves out there and kind of show it to them, I think yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Anyone who wants to answer the second or discuss about it?
I think
Yes,
I'd like try answering.
yes.
Um, so I think spirituality you can definitely implement it through a proxy. Maybe like so if you look at the case of probably Sweden, the way they've taken care of their jail and the way they take care of their prisoners, they give them a lot of opportunity. They give them the space and they give them the environment where they can learn and grow, which is like indirectly if they gain a skill or if they become equipped to handle society once they go out, they automatically learn about themselves. So I think indirectly they're on the path of spirituality and understanding themselves better, which is probably with the best way. It's a very good way to go, and like it's a better way to you can implement that in the judicial system or the law enforcement system. So I think that's like a very interesting way of probably applying spirituality.
And
And
also that's more, yeah. So sorry to cut you off. Yes.
now you can go ahead.
I've also seen certain organizations who actually go to the jails and the prisons, and then they actually make it a course for them to, understand what spirituality is through various activities. So I think, so like how, in the US, what happens is if a person is, let's say if a person is mentally ill, he's not mental in a mental capacity and he just commits crime, so they are sent to the psychiatric ward or to be treated. So in the same way, I think there could be a program that judiciary, the sitting judge could make it compulsory for them to go through. So maybe like this is a kind of this is not something that wouldn't be possible, but this could be made, kind of be implemented in our country.
May I
So
add, if that's
yeah.
okay? So I think personally, so I feel like the U.S. the judicial system, I mean the law enforcement system, the jails and the way they treat prisoners, like these are obviously going to help, but then um, they're already the reason why they're there in the first place is probably because they weren't in a proper environment. They didn't have resources. They were completely deprived of the same, and that's the reason it triggered them to like break the law, and that's exactly why they're there. So if we address the root cause, and that is to provide them resources like just help them probably get educated if they're not educated, give them books to read, make it a very like give them the open space to grow and not block them up a lot, like because we're all humans and we need to socialize. And um, I think those are the reasons, those are the things that we need to focus on. Just go more in depth and see why the root cause of it is. And if the law enforcement, if we're able to enable that and we're giving them that environment, they will automatically their incentive to go back into society and make a life for themselves will be there, and their crime rate, they will not go back to committing a crime because they're equipped enough to go back to society and integrate with the same. They won't feel like outsiders. And I think obviously India as a society, we look down on people who've committed crimes. So once going back to society, getting integrated, it's not an easy thing, especially with the societal pressures. But if we kind of break that stereotype, if we start from the prisoners first and we see like if they come out as well equipped individuals, over time they will gain trust. And I think that will be like the image about prisoners and the people who've come out from the prison will change over time.
Perception, yes. But I really wanted to know about this specific question, the third question, because let's say when we talk about certain things like, oh, this offender, like, this offender should be forgiven, or, could be given another chance. There's also a set of people who would think that, he shouldn't be forgiven. In fact, there are people in our country who are actually, supporting capital punishment towards, like, at the end, especially the people, like, who rape. So what do you think? Like, because somehow being a female by myself, I might also be hurt if, like, it's uh it's not being easy on them. But at the same time, because our Indian system also kind of believes in reformatory, reformative, you know, to reform them, it only makes sense to kind of give them a second chance. So what do you think about this? I mean, what could be done? Because it wouldn't be easy on those victims to kind of go ahead with, with life. So how could this be implemented or could be tackled? And what do you think?
Like I would just like to add, like I mean, these kinds of crimes that like actually make a huge impact on
Right,
like someone's mind, and and these crimes in India especially are so much of prevalent. If nothing else, then like one like every woman has been molested once in their life at least. So
right,
I think we should in India at least we should start more like talking about it, because the main problem is that when someone gets raped, the woman feels that they have done something wrong. If nothing else,
right,
we change that perspective, that people won't marry them, or these kinds of problems start arising with them, right? And people might distance them from her or something like that. So these kind of, like I mean, if we try to, like I mean, when it comes to the victim's point of view, they should like one of the things is that we should do something about that. And I don't think like forgive like they can be forgiven in like victims cannot really forgive, like even us, like I feel we cannot, we don't forgive someone, we just forget it. Or it's not possible to forgive someone. Maybe we take it in some other way, or we forget it, or something like that. Once someone does something like this, like it cannot be forgiven, because they make such a huge impact on our lives. And I guess the way they can be punished, one of the ways is that maybe whatever the criminals would be earning in their life, some of the like part of their income could go to them, or like don't punish them so severely, but I mean, but they should realize this, they should be reminded of what I think they did, or like how they can be like they should also get a chance to be more than that, because I think no one would do such a thing until and unless something, some childhood trauma, or like
right,
uh, until they are guided or something. Everyone does something because they have had their experience, or those things only trigger them. So if we take care of that in the childhood only, I think these kind of cases can reduce.
right. There was this one of the lecture that I got to attend by Professor James Kimmel. He is an advocate himself and then a violence researcher. So he kept on mentioning, beautifully kept on mentioning about forgiveness. So then even I thought, like, oh, I mean, why should I forgive? But then he said something which actually changed my mind, saying that like they say the victims, they could just spirituality. Okay, spirituality we are inculcating, or including that into law, where criminals are gonna change or not gonna change, or some impact is gonna sort of happen to them. But when it comes to victims, how can we can apply spirituality on ourselves, because we need to understand ourselves much better than anyone else. And that's how the outlook of how we look at things would change. Than focusing on forgiving them, we could just focus on forgiving ourselves, because what happens is most of the victims tend to blame themselves and put themselves in a tough spot. That what happens through the process is just it gets worse, and then the more hatred, it just increases the fear and the hatred within themselves, within them. So I think spirituality could actually help the victims in a different way, in a way to handle themselves, and then in a way to be able to put themselves out in the society and be more strong and not live with fear and not live with hatred, because it only just gets worse if that's how it builds up to them. So spirituality, I think, could be applied differently for criminals and differently from the victims. And then if like how you have rightly said, that if they could just come out and look into the society and kind of make a positive impact through the experiences that they have gained out of spirituality, I think that could actually help the victims to you know have a different outlook, while you know while they evolve through spirituality by themselves. If 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 any one of you agrees with that. Hi, Parvez.
Hi.
Hi. You just joined or you were there?
No, I have just joined, I think, maybe 5 minutes ago.
Okay, okay.
Okay. If you allow, I'll also would like to know, share my perspective,
Yes,
especially
yes,
on this justice and forgiveness. You
yes.
see, whenever any, yeah, there are two things actually. So, I would like to discuss it separately. First is whenever any crime takes place,
Hmm.
you see, let's say there are two entities. Okay. One is one person A, another is B. B is, let's say, a victim. Okay.
Right,
Now, there is always a conflict, and I am discussing it in terms of rights, human rights, in the
right,
context of human rights. Now, whenever we talk about the concept of rights, fundamental rights, even in our constitution, so there is a concept that while enjoying your rights, you can't impact others' freedom,
right,
right? So that's the basic and fundamental concept of any right. Let's say if I I'm just giving an example.
yes,
Let's
yes,
say I, as a matter of human being, I think that okay, it is my right to uh, let's say drive any vehicle, let's say a car, okay, and I want to enjoy it at some high speed, let's say. Now that's, I may think that okay, as part of my entertainment or so, I have that right. But if it is affecting the freedom and rights of others, then that there is a question. Okay. So if we utilize rather use this concept in crime and rights, now there will be clarity that anybody, irrespective of the scope of the the crime, there is a clear fundamental that we one cannot impact others' freedom. Okay,
right,
and this freedom can be relative also. It is affected by factors like cultural aspects, social norms, and time also. Time plays a big role here. Okay, what was accepted, let's say 20 years ago, may not be accepted now or 20 years later down the line, right? This is one thing about crime. Now forgiveness and the punishment, let's say. Now punishment, what happens, obviously in the jurisprudence there are views for the legal experts that okay, you can't forgive anybody if they have committed some crime, they deserve punishment. You see, the thing is, what will be there on the plate of the victim? Let's say if there is a victim, okay, he or
right,
she has had some negative impact. Now, the question is, what will that person, the victim, will get by, let's say, punishing the criminal? So this is
Right.
also one aspect. So there is this thing that that if the person, the criminal, has realized more, it is more the concept of realization. Then this concepts of forgiveness and arise. That's my understanding. Forgiveness cannot be just a one-sided process. That's my
Right.
understanding. Yeah. So these are
So,
relative and contextual also.
right. So, anything that you would like to add? It would feel
No, I think criminal aspect, this and the forgiveness, this was the thing, I think, last question, if I'm not wrong. And okay, let me link it with the spirituality also. You see, whenever we talk about spirituality, it says that spirituality on an individual level. Okay, now we can't say that spirituality acts only at the individual level. Okay, definitely. I mean, at an individual level, everybody has a right, irrespective of their, whether he or she is the crime or a victim. They have every right to, apply or utilize spirituality as a matter. That's not a big question, as per my understanding. Now, the question will be whether the application of spirituality, at the community level or at the pluralistic level. I think that is the thing I think we should discuss in this case specifically. Only then I think this application of spirituality to the law or the jurisprudence will make sense. That's my understanding on spirituality.
right. Uh, Naresh, so anything that you would like to add or give comments on this?
The discussion has been really interesting. I missed your presentation part, but we're listening to the discussion, and I find the perspectives are all very interesting. The one or 2 points I would add. One is, you referred to the lecture that James Kimmel gave, and
Yes.
he did talk about. You correctly quoted him, not direct quote, but referred to him as saying, forgiveness really helps the victim as much as, or even more, than the perpetrator. It has to do so much more with the victim who carries a pain, of that crime or that event, and that forgiving the victim helps. Rather, forgiving the perpetrator helps the victim so much. So that's an important point he made, and he demonstrated it, as you know, with the little exercise he did in the class. But the bigger concept of his work, which is that the justice system has essentially become like the high priests of revenge. That what justice is all about in most countries is perpetrating a sense of one person getting revenge on the others. And that when they feel that they have gotten this revenge, that they get on a high, not unlike the high that is induced by narcotics. You get a similar kind of high. The brain is in this kind of chemical flow that is become addictive. And the studies, of course, that he has done and his colleagues at Yale and elsewhere have been on American society. So we can't really extrapolate to others. I have a gut feeling, I haven't done the work, but I have a gut feeling that in many societies it will turn out to be true. That just seeking justice is like seeking revenge. And it's become addictive that you are really seeking revenge. And for me, that's fascinating. So would we deal with a society that has become addicted to revenge seeking in the name of justice. And they are now coming up with some proposals and some solutions. So that's a fascinating concept and idea to deal with. And the way he articulates it in his paper, one of which is on the web, is really interesting. The other point that I would make, apart from James Kimmel's work on justice, is the point about that you have made as well on when we understand that most of us walk around thinking that we are our ego, and we are not able to look at ourselves and understand the difference between what we imagine ourselves to be and what a little bit of investigation into our true nature would lead us to realize that, we are not separate from each other. We share a common consciousness. We share that same common consciousness with nature, and that we are this integral part of nature as well as with each other. When we come to that kind of understanding, the whole issue of how we think about law and justice, I believe, will change. The way we educate and the way we teach law students, the way judges behave on the bench, and so on, I think will all change, because right now the default assumption is that we are all individual sentient beings, which is, adopted from a more a Western kind of philosophical frame, whether that West is from the British common law tradition or the French Napoleonic code tradition. It's still that kind of philosophical frame that we are drawing from. Now, if we draw from a frame of Taoism, Buddhism, Advaita Vedanta, what would it look like? We probably would come up with a different approach to the justice system. So that bigger point is the point I wanted to flag as well in terms of the overall thinking on spirituality and law. So just those few points.
Yes, sir. Thank you. It actually it actually made it very clear.
Somebody wanted to comment, Parveez?
Yeah. So yeah, Professor, I would like to know comment on two things, rather two, you can say, comments. One is see, law and morality. These affect each other. They are other, you can say, that interrelated also in a society. If you see related to this, whenever we talk about any value system, I also made this point earlier also, that value system, we can't take it as absolute at times, or rather most of the times. It is relative. That's my understanding, because it depends on a lot of factors, right? Social norms, culture, time, temporal aspects. So this is one aspect. Another is all these discussions, spirituality, law, and justice. Now, I think one aspect, I'm not sure whether this presentation has covered or not, specifically in the context of the global South or Indian scenario, let's say. You see, it is dependent on the delivery of the justice also. In India, what happens whenever we talk about or even Indian courts, they have introduced these concepts like alternative dispute resolution or so. Now, why is it required? One is that there is quite a lot of delay in the justice in the delivery of the justice, right? So we have to discuss these things in that context also. Context of the reality. Reality means the applicability of the law. Otherwise, I think these things will become more of a theoretical understanding. That's my comment. Yeah.
Yeah, you're right. And the way we deal with it in our work on spirituality that we have started now, we have started this work at the center. the center at JSGP on complexity economics, applied spirituality, and public policy. And the way I explain this is morality is relative, and you're absolutely correct on that. I agree with that. Because it's also morality is related to an ethical system. So what is right or wrong in society is a function of the values that society accepts and that they define on the basis of those values acceptable and unacceptable behavior. So we would find that a lot of these are driven by some norms. And so what we are dealing with is what is called deontological ethics, right? The ethics of right and wrong and moral behavior and relative values. And these are relative, they change over time. At one time, there might have been societies in which, having multiple spouses, whether they be one man with many wives or one woman with many husbands, polyandry, polygamy, and all these things, would have been morally correct in those societies. And in fact, the opposite, if you only had monogamy, that might have been considered an immoral stand to take for whatever reasons that society would have had. And we can go through lots of examples of that kind. But when you come to spirituality as we teach it and understand it, we are now going to an ethics not of having an ethics not deontological based upon relative norms. We are going to a deeper understanding of human nature, which leads us to the conclusion that all humans have a fundamentally common nature. Now we are going to ontological ethics, you see, the nature of being rather than the ethics of having. So lots of ethics are behavioral, linked to either property or life and things of that kind. We are now looking at going to, and Swami Vivekananda was perhaps a leader in this field, talking about the ethics of our society needing to move from deontological to ontological, which is the ethics of being and understanding that nature. Now that is a far way off, I grant you that, I fully take that, and we are not there yet. But at least we need to have a vision of where we can go, where it's possible to go. Of course, the path is going to be difficult and take time, but that's where I believe we will, sort of liberate ourselves from merely deontological ethics and use spirituality in the sense we are understanding, researching, and teaching it, which takes us to the absolute. It takes us to the absolute where the vision is that we will all come to realize that, if you want to call it Brahman, or you want to call it consciousness, or you want to call it pure awareness, that's our fundamental nature. And what derives from that is truth, compassion, love. And that's where the application of this deeper understanding really comes. When this begins to pervade our society, then our justice systems and so on will reflect that kind of value. Right now, and I can't blame the justice system because it's clearly reflecting what lawyers and judges and the law tends to reflect of the society, which is a society that is so lost on two things. One, it doesn't know its own true nature, which I think people are going to come to realize more and more. And secondly, it is so caught up in a materialistic world which defines progress in the world, that it's all the ontological, whether it be human rights or beyond human rights, as the frame of morality. So yes, I fully agree with you that that's where the world is now. But when we talk about spirituality, we are thinking about what else needs to be done as we understand more and more deeply what our true nature is, and one might ask the question, how do you know? I mean, if they ask me that question, how do you know that what you are calling our deeper true nature is in fact true? Or is just something that religious leaders have dreamed of. Well, we have done a lot of the literature search in the wisdom traditions and and now in modern science and documented the evidence. I think it's overwhelming that both complexity theory, cognitive neuroscience, quantum physics, the neurosciences are all leading us to the same conclusion. So that would be the answer to that question. That is how we know that we are headed to a deeper understanding, a more spiritual understanding of what human beings truly are. So that's a quick reaction, Parviz, to what you correctly observed.
Yes, thank you very much, Professor, for your insightful comments.
Welcome.
And last thing, I would like to congratulate the center for continuing these discussions. These are quite insightful. I mean, I'm no longer a student of JSGP. I'm an alum, so whenever I get time, so I attend this.
Oh, wonderful! Really good to have you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much for all your insights, because I think I'm also in a position that I do not hold a specialty in law and spirituality, and how how everything works around it. But then, yeah, I've learned quite a lot, and then I think others have also have have this discussion has been helpful to learn from each other. Now that we are at the end of our discussion, I would just like to conclude from all the points that we have discussed. Is that we all did agree that it is important that we do the crime should be reduced in our society, and we also agree that there is a need to foster a culture of spirituality. Spirituality indeed adds dignity to how people look at each other. It also creates a channel to empower people to recognize their own goodness so that they could obey laws themselves, and the others in the society do respond to the victims' appeals with a greater responsibility and humanity. Uh, so I think both of them together could create a culture that would be able to create harmony deep within the people where laws cannot reach. And of course, laws need to be there in place to kind of restrict ourselves from doing anything stupid, to be more honest. So those should be there, but then it should be also the spirituality should and law should be worked in harmony. So so and this could actually promise an inner security that fences and guards people in a much better way, and it could actually create a very harmonious and a healthy society. So I would like to conclude on that note of this discussion.
Excellent. Thank you, Jaya. I think it's back to them to Chester.
Yes, Professor Singh, thank you. Thanks for joining, everyone. The slides can be uploaded on the MS Teams chat if you need. And we do have one more reference that Jaya wanted to mention here. We couldn't access it online, but if you all can access it from your personal accounts, that would be very helpful. Jaya, you want to mention that one?
Yes, I'll just post it over here. It's the Oxford handbook on spirituality, law, and the peace. I'll just post the link here. So if anyone could access it, then that would be great, because it actually that book consists of how applied spirituality to each and every aspect, like let's say leadership, or let's say anything for that matter. So there's one chapter specifically dedicated to applied spirituality and law. So yeah, I mean that could be used as a great reference, and we could actually learn much more. So I'll just post the link here on this chat. So if there's anyone who can access that, then that would be great. Is that fine?
Yeah, that would
Yes,
be fine. Jaya,
thank
just say it, what is the name of the reference?
So 1 second.
Handbook of Applied Spirituality and Law?
So it's I'm just
Okay. Well, you're going to post it anyway, right?
yes, sir.
All right, so Jaya can post that on the group, on the MS Teams chat, and we will meet for the next R&DC session on quantum-like modeling and public policy. So the invitation.
Yeah, and one more thing, Testa and the team. I think in the last couple of sessions, your team has been showing some video also, maybe of 1 minute or 2 minutes, maybe something related to spirituality. I think these they were quite effective for the audience. So you would like to continue with that.
All right. Sorry, I mean, you're suggesting that we take up videos also, just like we did in the previous
It's a
sessions.
suggestion, the feedback. Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Thank you. Thank you for suggesting that. We'll definitely incorporate.
So I've posted the link on the book. It's the
Yeah.
It is, yes, yeah.
Oh, I didn't see this one. This would be interesting. Thanks for bringing this up.
Yes, yes. It has, I think, everything, every aspect of how we can connect applied spirituality to each and every aspect of the society or day-to-day lives that we
Wow. So I wonder whether it's already done what we are trying to do in our
Yes,
book.
sir. Yes, kind of, sir. Yes. I mean, they have a lot of chapters like in this.
We should we have to bring this to the attention of all our potential authors.
Yes, yes, sir. I just got to know about this just recently.
Good find. Thank you. All right, Chester, that brings us to the end.
Yes, Professor Singh. So we are exactly on time. Thank you very much for joining, everyone. We will see you next time. Thank you
Thanks
so
a
much.
lot, guys. Thanks, Jaya. Great job.
Thank you.
So,
Thank you. Thanks.
Thanks, Jaya. Thanks, everyone. Thank you, Professor Singh.
You're welcome. Take care.